The Overwatch PTR is a beautiful place. They keep changing Lucio, but they keep changing him for the better. We've also got a little bit of a buff to Genji in a way, although it's not as huge as you guys might think. And Hanzo's Lunge ability has been tweaked again. All right, guys, let's get stuck into this. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the channel. I am Stylosa, and you may remember, guys, that the whole idea with the Overwatch PTR is that they can make rapid changes. They can do this thing known as fast iteration, which means they can just throw a change on the PTR and go, hey, is this going to work? And then go, oh, you know what, it's not working, let's change it. It looks like they're actually starting to realize that. Lucio was changed on the PTR quite heavily. Now, I covered this in a video. We went into massive detail on it. However, there was a Lucio option that was added recently and then removed. But then we've got an explanation as to why this has been removed. Now, this is from Jeff Goodman, and he is, of course, a principal game designer. And what I'm going to do is go through the updated changes that are on the PTR now and explain why they're good and why this is actually quite a bright sign for Overwatch's future. So Lucio had a couple of notable things done to him. So he basically is stuck to walls, he's glued to walls, and he can wall ride around corners. And he can basically stay on one wall if it's just sort of got annoying surfaces like bulges or angles on it or whatever that in the past would have knocked you off. Now Lucio just glides past them. However, what they did is they reduced the speed boost Lucio got when he disconnected from a wall. So when you jumped off a wall, Lucio was actually a little bit slower. That was really annoying. So this is what we've got here from Jeff. He says this: wall leap boost reverted back to 2.5 meters per second. We'll keep an eye on this to make sure it doesn't get super out of control. So what they're saying here is, look, we're going to reduce it because we know that it's kind of a bit annoying, right? Everyone's used to Lucio disconnecting from the wall at the speed he's been doing for a while. That's like one of the benefits of playing Lucio. He's got an extremely fast rollout, Lucio. This is awesome, right? So what they've done is they've actually reverted this back. So he was slower. Now they've made him the speed he is right now on live, which is good. There was also a bug that they fixed, which was causing loss of momentum when landing and boosting of very small columns, such as trees, etc. So that's awesome and great. Then this is the interesting thing, and this is like initially when I was making this video, the video basically focused on this a lot, where this feature or this new Hanzo option they put into the game, they then removed it from the game. And Jeff gives a reason why. So basically, this is what they did. They added and then promptly removed the hero option to control how much time is required to hold jump before you would wall ride around corners. That was huge, right? Because what was happening is Lucio would be connected to the walls, right? And he didn't feel like old Lucio, who was kind of a bit slippery when jumping off walls, disconnected from walls. Like, sometimes you don't want to hug the wall and wall ride around the corner. The old Lucio playstyle is at the end of the wall, you disconnect, right? So you would be used to doing that. So what they did is they actually gave you an option in the game where you could change this. You could change the behavior. You could say, I don't really want to wall ride around a corner, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, or just leave it how it is and we'll just see how we go. This is like a beautiful thing. Anyway, Jeff goes on to say, we may add this back in the future, but we're just setting this to 0.3 seconds for everyone now. It is worth noting that this option only appeared for one build and wasn't hooked up to actually function. It wasn't intended to appear in the build, actually. So even though it was there, it didn't actually work. But it was interesting that it was there in the first place, right? This is them giving you more control, because I think what was happening is they were getting a lot of feedback from Lucio players who were saying, look, this is fine and it's great. Lucio can wall ride much easier now. Like, I'm not a Lucio player, but when I was playing Lucio on the PTR, it felt a bit ridiculous because it's very easy for me to contest points by, going around columns. Very easy for me to just wall ride in general. Whereas before, it took a bit of skill. Like, being a very good Lucio who could wall ride was a very notable skill in the game. So for them to dumb that down did feel a little bit annoying. However, the changes they're making now are making Lucio, I think, honestly, retain his very high skill cap in terms of wall riding, but also allowing people who maybe want to get into playing Lucio to give them a little bit of an easier way into it, if that makes any sense. It is very interesting, though, that this option did appear, which did allow you to change the time it would take for you to disconnect from the wall, which essentially means that you could just not go around the corner and play Lucio how he was played before, which I think is super, super, super interesting. The next thing I want to talk about is Genji. So Genji's hitbox was reduced on the PTR for Deflect, and it was reduced quite substantially, even to the point of, I mean, basically, the Deflect animation you see is where Genji would deflect from, which I think is fine. However, there was a bit of a problem. You could kind of headshot Genji while he was deflecting, which I don't think is the intention. Genji shouldn't really take any damage from the front while he's deflecting, unless it's from a beam attack. In which case, that's fair game, because, well, Genji only deflects projectiles. However, this is what Jeff says about what they've done to him on the PTR right now. We've also increased the height of Genji's deflect back to what it was. The overall size is still smaller, but the lowered height specifically was causing him to be able to be headshot when jumping sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, okay, that's fine. I agree with that. Like, the only issue I had with Hanzo's deflect is I just want deflect to be what we see on the screen, because it's very frustrating when you fire at that and it just deflects shots back all over the place, even when clearly you're not firing at the deflect animation. So, yeah, this is like a bit of a quality of life change. It is a bit of a buff if you look at it from that way, because, well, you can't be headshot, but it's more of a fix than a buff, really. And then we've got Hanzo's lunge ability. Now, I'll read off what Jeff says about this. So he says, we've also made a change to Hanzo's lunge ability. So if you use it and then wall climb within a tiny window of time, it won't consume the cooldown. This is there to fix a case where you try to climb a wall using the jump button, but your lunge ability is off cooldown, which would cause it to be used as part of, basically this is a fix, right? So this means, yeah, this is fixed. You'll be able to lunge, wall climb. You shouldn't lose cooldown and all that good stuff. Now, honestly, I want to finish the video off with a little bit of a discussion on the PTR itself. Like I touched on at the start of this video, PTR, for a very long time, I mean, I remember the infamous Bastion Ironclad, where I think he had 35% damage reduction when he was in Sentry mode, which is a bit ridiculous. However, or it might have been 30%. It was a ridiculous amount anyway. That was very clearly overpowered on the PTR, yet no changes were made. And then he just went straight to live, and then we had to deal with this Bastion that was ridiculously OP for 1 to 2 weeks before they fixed it. The whole idea before that happened was to use PTR as a fast iteration playground, somewhere where you could go and be like, oh, let's just make this change. Let's see if it works now. We don't think it's working that well. Let's just make this change. It looks like what they're starting to do now is actually use the PTR like that. I think it almost looks to me like they're using less of a focus on collecting data from the live servers before they make certain changes. Like the Lucio wall ride change is a radical change. You can see why they've done it, but then you can see all these minor changes that they've started to do. And I honestly think Lucio right now on the PTR does feel pretty good, especially to me. Now, I'm not a Lucio player, so I think maybe ultra high-end Lucio players might be like, well, actually, Sty, this is kind of, it is dumbing down the Lucio a little bit, and it's not great. If that's their opinion, and if that's your opinion, guys, then let me know in the comments below. I think with Genji, with them looking at his deflect, it's about time. Sometimes I have to ask myself questions like, how did they allow this to remain in the game for as long as possible? I don't know how difficult it is to change something like that, but surely it can't be that hard if all they're doing is reducing the hitbox size of an ability. It's probably just some parameters that they changed, like Genji deflect is this wide, is this high, and that's all they've really tweaked. So things like that are really annoying, especially when they've been in the game for so long. I do think, though, when we look at things like Hanzo, and we look at that radical change of Hanzo that we've got on the PTR, that is, again, quite ridiculous. Will we see changes to that? I don't know. I think he's very good as like a shield buster or just firing down damage into a choke. I mean, I can see like hellish comps with like a Hanzo and a Junkrat just deleting Reinhardt's from the game. I mean, Reinhardt's got a problem anyway, but anything like that, or like an Orisa that sets up in a position, the amount of damage they can output very quickly is astonishing. Like, is that the way the devs want the game to go? Do they really want this level of like shield breaking in the game? I don't know. It's a very interesting question to put forward. But the fact is, it looks like the PTR is being used in a very clever way now, in the way that they almost intended it to be used. I think as well, the amount of changes we've got on the PTR like right now are pretty astonishing. It's good to see that. It's good to see that they are looking at ways to change up the game, to fix heroes that might need a little bit of love. And when I look at other heroes that I think do need a bit of extra spice, I mean, I think Ana is probably right up there. She's not really playable. As harsh as that sounds, yes, she is playable, but she's nowhere near the level of the other supports, and I think that's a bit of a problem. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think it's about time that they've been using the PTR, well, that they are using the PTR like they are right now, which means fast iterations, fast changes? They're looking at things that matter to us as players, if that makes any sense. Because for a long time, they can, well, not for a long time, but they can kind of get a little bit sidetracked, I think, with certain changes. Whereas, like, you know, things like Genji's Deflect are quite obviously, that's needed fixing for a long, long time. I guess the ultimate question here is, what are they going to do in the future? Are we going to see changes to competitive rollout on the PTR? Are we going to see other sort of major overhauls like that? Yeah, there's a lot of problems with Overwatch. It is a fantastic game, but it is good to see that the devs are starting to fix the heroes. All right, guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. PTR is a massively complex subject. Let me know what your experience of the PTR has been. Do you think it's worth playing on the PTR? Do you actually need a reward to play on the PTR? Because as it stands right now, the only benefit you get from the PTR is getting to check out the changes. You don't actually earn any kind of XP. You don't earn loot crates. Maybe if you did earn loot crates, maybe if you did earn XP, that could be something that makes you play PTR more. I know that they do have a bit of an issue with the player base on the PTR. It's very difficult to, it doesn't really have much of a population, which is a problem, because it means if you do want to look at data, it's going to be hard. It means you have to wait until the changes go to live, which again is not ideal, because we don't want broken changes going to live. You know, that's happened before in the past, and we don't want that happening again. Anyway, I could talk about PTR forever, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Lucio is being heavily changed with his wall ride, and I think he's in a decent position. Genji is still being tweaked, but I think it's more of a fair reflection of his deflect ability, and Hanzo is still being worked on. All right, guys, I'm Stylosa. This is Unit Lost. If you enjoyed the video, then like the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Toodaloo.